necessity.
All right. Sorry, I was getting the recording going on this.
Okay, thanks. Fine. Thanks.
So the statement of necessity is pursuant to Tennessee Code annotated 844-108. A statement of necessity will be needed to determine if an electronic meeting was necessary. Necessity means that the matters to be considered by the governing body at the meeting require timely action by the body, that physical presence by a quorum of the members is not practical within the period of time requiring action, and that participation by a quorum of the members by electronic or other means of communication is necessary. There is a need for timely action today to fulfill the goals and requirements of the executive committee. Meeting in person is not an option today, April 22nd, 2024, due to members being physically located across the state with limited schedule of availability and the need to discuss and set the agenda for the full Tennessee Commission on Aging and Disability meeting taking place on May 14th, 2024.
Thank you, Brian. And can we do the roll call?
Brian, will you do the roll call?
Sorry, I put myself on mute.
No, that's okay.
I jumped the gun. I was so happy to be done reading. I just went ahead and muted myself. Carol Westlake.
Present.
Christy Wick.
Present.
Michael Willis.
Present.
Tracy Moore.
Present.
All right, you have a quorum.
Great. Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate that. And so our first order of business is approval of the executive committee minutes from our previous meeting that predated the February TCAD meeting. I think Shannon sent those out to everyone. Did anyone note any edits or changes that need to be made? If not, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I just looked at somewhere in there. I accidentally closed it out. There was a note about multi-sector plan on aging, and it had my name beside it in parentheses, and I'm not sure I'm responsible for that. I don't remember what the conversation was exactly, but I think we talked about including some more information on the multi-sector plan for aging, or maybe I brought it up. I just can't remember.
I think you may have brought it up.
Okay.
But I think you're correct. You have no direct responsibility for it. Yeah. I don't actually have those in front of me. Do you want me to open those up?
I'm working on it. I'm almost there. Okay. It was on.
It's under a bullet point, new business.
Yep. New business, like the fourth bullet point down.
Okay. See if I can.
Maybe just a clarification that it should be discussed, or we suggest it was a suggestion as a discussion point or something like that.
Yeah. Let's see.
Shannon's not here with us, but I think, Christy, that is what she was trying to make a note of as who brought the topic up. I don't think the intent was to give you any specific homework or additional assignments related to that.
I hope not. Thanks.
Okay. Good deal. Well, with that understanding, I would entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
So moved.
Thank you, Mike. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Tracy. All those in favor?
Nope. Roll call vote.
Oh, roll call vote. You'd think I'd remember these things.
I am always on my toes. All right. Carol Westlake.
Yes.
Christy Wick.
Yes.
Michael Willis.
Approved. Yes.
Tracy Moore.
Yes.
The ayes have it.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay. I don't have a lot of comments to make this afternoon, except to say woo-hoo, it's been a pretty successful year at the legislature, it seems like, and lots of change in the offing. I hope things have been okay for the staff as this whole thing has continued to move forward in terms of a new Department of Disability and Aging Services. Wow. I think that this will be a really interesting upcoming meeting to really begin to talk about that transition and all of that. So I think that's exciting. I also have noted that we're just about there on developing a new licensure category for small group homes for folks who are seniors, which I also think will go a long way toward hopefully addressing some of the housing challenges that we have had and continue to have in our community. So again, I think it's kind of an exciting time, you know, kind of amazing. Are there other things that any of you have sort of been tracking that you want to share about our bright future here? If not, I will just make a note that on our agenda, I put in a placeholder for reviewing comments from the previous TCAD meeting. You know, this was something that we talked about at the TCAD meeting. We have moved our public comment section during the regular meeting up to earlier in the meeting so that we can have discussion about the issues that the public may bring forward. But there was also some question about, so, you know, people make public comment, then what do we do with that after that happens? And so we had discussed at our last executive committee meeting, making space for that in our executive committee meeting each time. So we would look back at, for example, the comments that were made in February before we came up in May, so that there might be some response or some suggestion about what we might do. Now, last February, there were no public comments, so there's not really much for us to talk about today. But I did put that, I just thought we'd start putting that on the agenda so it would remind us that that's what we were going to do. And because I think that, you know, if people are going to make those comments, they also want they want to know that somebody's paying some attention to them besides listening to them at the meeting and then moving on into nothingness. So that is what that agenda item is about. And just a reminder that we're going to be sort of taking that on. And then really our plan for today is our next agenda item, which is establishing a proposed agenda for the May commission meeting. They come up every quarter. So here we are. There is a sort of a template that Shannon, and I see Shannon has joined us. Shannon, thanks for being here. Puts together. And so we will do what we ordinarily do, I think. If it makes sense to you, we'll doing our standard call to order, that sort of thing. Comments, I think we'll hear comments from Commissioner Turner, obviously, our new leader. And then put a public comment period in at the beginning of the meeting. Does that still make sense to you all to kind of do it there?
Right.
Because then it opens up discussion, I think, for later on. So we'll do that. I think we will continue to do, if it works for you all, our sort of commissioner spotlight, to, you know, our member spotlight for the commission. And Shannon, have you heard from Adam Morgan?
So, yeah, I believe Adam did say he could, and Sally would like to be moved to November.
Okay, so the two state positions that we have not yet heard from were Adam Morgan at TennCare and Sally Pitt from the Department of Health. So Adam will do our sort of state commissioner spotlight, and then we need to ask one of our newer members, I think. Mike, thank you last time for doing your spotlight, and Tracy and Christy have done spotlights. So
not a problem. I'm wearing one of my props.
excellent, excellent. So that was good. So Shannon, help me think about who we have not heard from. I don't think we've heard from Tina Fields, right?
Tina Fields, Cindy Strong, Anthony Holt or Terry Frank or Jason. I don't think Jason Schwab has spoken.
I don't think he has either. Anybody have any preference about who you would like to hear from? Let's see, Mike is from the East, so we don't, our very newest person is from the West, isn't she?
Yes, Jerry Curry, but we probably want to give her a minute.
Give her a minute to actually join.
Or at least give her a meeting.
To actually attend before we put her on the
Right.
spot. Yeah. Let's see. Well, so Jason is a Middle Tennessee person, right?
Well, he's
He's
federally
AARP.
chartered. So
Yeah.
he's AARP, and then Tony Holt is the GNRC rep.
Okay. So you think we should go to middle, guys, since we did East last time?
You want me to ask Anthony?
Yeah, why don't you? Yeah.
Okay.
Does that make sense? That work for folks?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Let's see if he will do that, and I think that'll put us in good shape. So at our last meeting, we just had Shelley kind of do program updates instead of doing reports from every single staff person, in which, I mean, it's always good to hear from staff people, but we also kind of run out of time for the group to have discussion. And so do we want to follow that format again? Does that make sense where we can, and maybe we can get sort of the written materials or, PowerPoints from folks. I know Chelsea always does such a great job around data. That
We
people
do
can
have
share.
one that, if you don't mind me suggesting, Sydney Inns just finished her volunteer impact report. And I'm sure she would enjoy sharing those results with you.
That would be great. If we've got a single report like that, that would probably be a great idea.
Okay.
Anybody else have thoughts about that? Okay.
I think the report is great. I wonder, I can't remember for sure. Do we have an update on the software conversion? Is everybody up and running now, or?
For the last year and some change, Christy.
Okay. I also am just wondering about, I mean, we are in this place where July 1st, there's going to be a big shift. And I wonder if we can't get Lauren or the commissioner to talk a little bit about transition planning, or I don't know, Shannon and Ryan and Marcia, are there staff that can kind of talk about how that's going, kind of give people a sense of what to expect?
You would probably have to reach out to either Brad or Lauren, Carol. We don't have any information.
Okay. I think I'm going to see Brad tomorrow probably anyway, so I will ask him about that. Does that make sense to you all to sort of ask the department to talk a little bit about what, walk us through what's going to be happening over the next couple of months? Yeah. I understand from Chrissy Freeland that the multi-sector plan on aging is likely to be moving over to the department in August. Have you all heard that? I mean, so I think that's a piece of, sort of the things that need to be talked about. Okay. I'm the only one talking, so I'll just keep talking.
No, I think all your points are valid. It would be nice to, I think, for everyone to have some marching orders or understand where we're headed.
Just kind of what's happening. Okay. Yeah.
I think a little bit on my end, there's a little bit of anxiety, but I mean, everything that's new, I mean, you're going to have that. So I just like to have something to give them.
Yeah, so people just understanding a little bit of the expectations or kind of a sense of what's going to be happening would be helpful.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So about how much time are you thinking? Or just wait till he gets with you?
Yeah, why don't we see? I mean, there's probably not, I mean, I don't know whether there's more than 10 or 15 minutes of
Okay.
information. Why don't we kind of book it in at 10 or 15 minutes, Shannon, and I'll just find out from the commissioner if he thinks there needs to be, if there's
Okay.
any more than that. I mean, but some introduction what the plan is, I think would be helpful. And then we will also include the volunteer impact report. And then Shelley doing kind of an overview of what's been happening since in general at the commission from the last time.
Carol, I was going to ask what you and the group as a whole thinks about assuming Commissioner Turner's available to provide an update and kind of a looking forward discussion. Would that make sense to put that in for his open discussion and question towards the beginning of the agenda, or do you think a separate agenda item
No,
is
I mean, I
needed?
think it would be great. I think it would be good if we can do it there. I think that would make sense. Yeah. Yeah. And then if he's not available to do that, we'll kind of work it out from there. Yeah. So, and that is about 20 minutes, and that's probably good. Yeah. It's, with some discussion and some comment, or questions if people have them. And then Christy, with the legislative committee, I wonder if it makes sense to ask for Mason to kind of do a legislative, he'll do a report to the committee, but do we want him to have to go ahead and do kind of an overview of what's happened? The department, but then other things relative to aging and disability as a part of staff reports, or do you want to do that as part of the legislative committee report?
I guess if the committee is still, well, I think either way, to me, it's always helpful to have legislative information as much as possible, especially for the larger group. But I guess I'm just wondering if the committee is still necessary in going forward. Especially if we're going to discuss it in the main group, I don't know that we need to do it twice necessarily.
Okay, so well, and I do think that sort of under new business, and maybe we should just kind of go to that. We're really talking about this sort of, monumental shift. And I know that there's been some questions about the various and sundry committees, right? Under new business, I think we talked about a couple of things. Including, do we want to think about, a proposed structure for working on housing issues? Do we need a housing committee, or do we need multiple housing committees? Because there are multiple issues, or do we take on one or two things? We kind of have done some that kind of thing. If the multi-sector plan on aging is going to be moving over here, is there something that the commissioners themselves want to do about that? Some of them obviously participate regularly. We've got a community living committee, we've got a strategic planning committee, we've got a legislative committee. We probably need to revisit the bylaws. We had a small bylaws committee that was put together, but we hadn't met as this whole department thing began to emerge. It was like there's probably not the time to look at bylaws.
Well, it seems
so
like the bylaws would not be applicable anymore. Is that true? If TCAD is dissolved or moved to the other, it seems like then a new set of bylaws has to be dealt with. I don't know.
Well, I think that the code moved over intact, and the code has, if I remember correctly, has a bylaws. It's got an audit committee in it, which we need to think about because it's in our bylaws. I think the bylaws haven't changed, but we're not operating by the bylaws of the commission. So I think that's probably some research that needs to be done, and we need to think about that. So I was just thinking that it might be time for a broader conversation within the total commission at the May meeting to talk about what we want to do about committees in general. Or is that just too much to take on at this point?
No, I mean, I think it's a good question, especially if everyone's trying to meet before, you know, like they normally do and all that good stuff. I think it has to be addressed somehow, some way.
Yeah, my question would be, should we wait for the transition to take place before we go into that?
By the next meeting, the transition will have taken place. So I think
Okay.
opening, so my thought, Michael, was opening up the discussion, not necessarily moving on action, right? But I think because this is not a group that moves quickly, as is my experience.
All right, I'm just learning here. I'm just learning here.
Nope. I think that's a really legitimate question.
Well, so circling back, I don't care at all to host the legislative committee meeting as per usual. I feel like there needs to be some discussion, and maybe that comes from Brad Turner's comments, but just again, marching orders, you know, once, as you stated, the next meeting, everything will emerge. So what do we do for the next meeting?
Yeah.
Or any work, I guess.
Right. So probably for this meeting, thinking legislatively, Christy, if we just ask the team at TCAD staff to sort of report on legislative outcomes from the session, right, to the large group, and not hold a legislative committee meeting. Does that make sense to you? And then think about where we head from there.
I think it does. I mean, it does to me, if that's okay with everyone else.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're happy to touch base with Mason and see, you know, make sure he's available. Hopefully session will be over by then, but
I think so.
Just in cases, we'll touch base with him and we'll follow up with you guys.
Great. That would be helpful. Good. So, Mike, do you serve on the strategic planning committee?
I'm on that one too.
Okay, yeah. I think that probably strategic planning and community living will be expecting to meet. So Shannon, let's go ahead and schedule those committee meetings for before the session. Does that make sense? So we'll do those meetings. And then I think I'm not sure. I need to look at under new business, I think just having a beginning discussion about a committee structure and ideas going forward, including relative to housing. And then Shannon, can you help me out? Is there any old business? I should have looked at the meeting minutes more carefully from the February meeting.
Oh, I probably should have looked as well.
Well, with the permission of the
Did I
executive
send you an
committee,
email about things? I thought I
you did. And your email says, because I have it open, that we talked about Acknowledging public comments within the executive committee, so we can report that we're doing that. Discuss housing as a focus with the new department. And so maybe that's old business at this point, that discuss the creation of a housing committee. And discussing partnerships or partnering with the 10 Care on the multi-sector plan on aging and AARP. So maybe those things go under old business, right? And then really new business is really sort of discussing how we move forward, in our new environment within the department in terms of committee structure and the commission's work. Other things? Okay, quiet crowd.
You're doing great, Carol.
What's that?
Said you're doing great, Carol.
It's like, I'll just chat away.
So the legislative committee is meeting
Is
as
not going to
scheduled.
meet. Is not
Is that
going to
right?
meet.
Yes, no.
No,
Not meeting.
not
no.
meeting. We're just going
Okay.
to ask for Mason to report on the outcomes of legislative session relative to aging and disability
In the general,
in the general
Commission meeting.
meeting. Yes.
okay.
Otherwise, it would likely just be redundant, right? I mean, because that's as we end the session, that's kind of where we are.
Do you want me to make that a note on the agenda? The legislative committee, in lieu of legislative committee, Mason will speak or something
Yeah.
in that
yeah,
section? So it doesn't
yes.
look like we just missed.
Yes, that would be perfect. Yeah.
Tracy, are you wanting to meet? I think it's literally you, me, and somebody else.
Yeah, I just always hesitant to, I don't know. I mean, I've just always heard successful organizations meet, and it's just it's a dangerous path to start going, well, we'll just, as long as this is, I guess it's a one-time thing, I'm okay with it. But, in the legislative committee meeting, I guess we have a little more time to delve into depth with
Well, that's
whatever,
true.
whatever
Yeah, I
issues
mean-
there are out there. But if we feel like it would be purely redundant, that this is going to be Mason telling us what went on at session, and there's really not anything to dig down into, and it's just, I understand not wanting to just make him do it twice, but I wouldn't want this to be a sort of a precedent to, like, well, okay, we did meet last time. Let's not meet the next time.
I mean, meeting does give you an opportunity to talk a little more in depth about what the impact, Mason can report on what happened, but there's a little more time to discuss what the impact of what happened might be,
And I'm perfectly fine meeting Tracy. That's not a problem at all. I guess my concern was that reporting out on the issues, I think the question is, do we want a full-scale report out for the general commission? And if so, then perhaps it's redundant. But if you want to focus more on each item, then I'm totally fine with that. I really am.
It's hard for me to say right now because I really don't know what's going to be coming up, and or whether or not there's really any role for the committee to react or to take a position or to make a recommendation or that kind of thing.
So I'm going to throw this out here, and this is based on my memory alone, which might be completely wrong. But it seems like Mason presented at the quarterly commission meeting after session was completely closed and did an overview. So I'm, again, just throwing this out there. I almost wonder if him reporting on things might be better scheduled for when we are absolutely certain session is over and he has time to compile all of that information. I know that's a gap and I get that, but again, just throwing that out there to see what y'all thought.
I wonder if we should ask Mason.
I
Yeah,
was just
Maybe-
maybe a text. See
Yeah.
it come in.
yeah.
Yeah,
Because if that was the case, Marcia, then I would suggest that the legislative committee meet with Mason and he can at least bring them up to speed about where we are if he hasn't had time to put together a comprehensive thing. It occurs to me, there's this licensure issue that I think is important. Obviously the department stuff, but maybe that may or may not be. Some of us have read the bill and made extensive notes on it. Other people probably don't know what was in the bill. The correction for DHS around adult protective services, right? I think there's some things that we've talked about before that would be nice to know at least what that outcome was.
Sure.
But I get your point about, I think session will be over, but it will just be over.
Right.
and giving him a chance to do that, and maybe doing a more comprehensive report at the next quarterly meeting, which would be what? August, right? But if that's the case, then I think it would behoove the legislative committee to hear from him. And to have some discussions about those things to help him frame that for August.
We'll touch base with him, guys, and circle back so we can help finalize things. And if you want, Tracy, Christie group, if you want to leave the legislative committee in that slot on the agenda, and if something changes, obviously we can just edit that. Does that work for y'all?
I think so.
Yeah, I think that works.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I'd also like to I have kind of the same concern with changing general commission meetings to not have every department of TCAD to give us a report, because I think it's important to maintain a level of connection between commission members and staff, and for commission members to constantly have a pretty well up-to-date notion of what's going on with the various programs with TCAD, because it took me a long time being a commission member. People would ask me, "Oh, so you're on the Tennessee Commission for Aging and Disability. What do you all do?" Well, that's a hard question to answer. My answer for a long time would start out, "Well, we do lots of things." Lots of things. Well, like what? Well, then I'd come up with something about nutrition and senior citizen centers and things like that. But I don't know. I just think it's a good idea to have the various programs put to the forefront of the commission members' minds, to be reminded this is what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I don't know if all of the various people in charge of the programs help. I would like to hear from time to time if one of our programs is having problems or difficulties, because then that may inform this meeting. Hey, we need to talk about the ombudsman program, or is her name Teresa Teeples?
Mm-hmm, it is.
So again, Teresa's having a really hard time keeping our program's having a really hard time keeping staff.
Mhm.
You know, we've got so many vacancies right now, and that would be a good thing to maybe for the full commission to at least be aware of. I mean, and that example I didn't just make up. I mean, we've had quite a bit of turnover in South Central Tennessee with our ombudsman program.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. I, I, I really hear you. I think the challenge is, we have one meeting a quarter and we've got it, we've got 11:30 to 3 to do it.
Yeah.
And if the commission only hears, and if we hear reports from everybody, we mostly only hear reports.
Yeah.
And there isn't time to say, okay, so Teresa's got a problem. What are we going to do about it? What's our recommendation? How do we as commissioners move forward?
Yeah.
In terms of real discussion and real work, unless we get pretty active with committees in between times, in between meetings. And I think we have found some challenge with doing that, and I'll say that I think that the commissioner and folks at what will be the new department of disability and aging have some ideas about how to make some of that work in between, and maybe that's what we need to be doing. But that's a commitment of people's time. Do you know? I mean, so I always feel this challenge about the balance between I've got one day, once a quarter to not only, hear from folks, but to also deliberate and make recommendations and do what it is we need to do. And how do we make that all fit?
maybe one thought may be to just make sure that the various personnel that are in charge of our programs are heard from at least on a rotating basis, and so that we have certain people we hadn't heard from all year. I would want to avoid that.
Yeah.
I mean, if we hear from well, I take it, will we always hear from our accounting person about the budget? Would that always be on there? Or?
I don't think it has always been, but I could be wrong about that. I was not at the last meeting, so I apologize. So probably somebody else in the group could speak to that better than I could.
That's going to be a really interesting question going forward with the structural change, right? I mean,
Yeah.
what does that look like?
I was going to say, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You took a breath, so I thought you were done. No, Tracy, in theory, I totally agree with you. And especially when it comes to the ombudsman issues, I think as a general rule, sitting where we sit right now, it's difficult because I don't know what programs are going forward. I don't know that we have any say in the matter regardless. I don't know who's going to run the program. It's just hard to spend time on things that we don't really know who's going to be in charge in the next couple of weeks or what programs will be going forward. I mean, and I think that's the bigger discussion, so what's the plan for the ombudsman program, moving forward? I think that's the key question, versus rehashing all the statistics over the past couple months. I mean, I think that's part of it, but just to have them report out on the data doesn't do a whole lot of good unless it's framed with what we'll be doing moving forward.
Yeah, and we're kind of in this unique situation because we're facing a really big change. I mean, and hopefully there are things that won't be dramatically changed, right? Because the commission has a staff that's been doing their job and will continue to do their job. But from a commission standpoint, from the appointed commission, it feels different in terms of how we arrange this stuff.
Okay. I was just under the impression wasn't nothing changing, that it was all the same program, same people, and just a different letterhead. But obviously that's naive and understating the level of change that's going to be happening. Is that right?
I think over time, I think hopefully, I mean, yeah, the Older Americans Act programs or the Older American Acts programs, there's a terrific staff that are in place and going to be working. But I do think that from my perspective, the commission itself's relationship to all of this is different when you move into a department. And I think we have to sort of work our way through that.
So in other words, we're not going to lose anything.
No.
Correct. Okay.
I don't think so.
Yeah, that's something I've got to inform my constituents, because yeah, we're going to lose this. I said, relax, guys. We're not.
No, I don't think so. I think over time it will strengthen all the programs because I think they'll have a higher profile
Yeah.
within state government than they
Yeah,
have had.
that's key element right there, the higher profile.
And I think the good work that this staff does will really show, in different kinds of ways. So Mason, you've joined us. We've been talking about you.
My ears weren't burning, so that old adage must not be true.
That's right. There you go. We were sort of talking about legislative committee and legislative report and whether or not we need to sort of wait for a comprehensive, here's what happened in the General Assembly until the August meeting, or whether that's something that you could do for the full commission at this upcoming meeting in May.
I could definitely do it for the committee, and if y'all feel like it's warranted for the whole commission. I mean, what we're hearing is that they're probably, and you probably know this, Carol, but they're likely going to be adjourning this week. So
yeah, I think that's right. So Christy just was thinking that we didn't necessarily need to be redundant. If it was just a report out, might be able just to move it right to the full commission, because people would be interested, especially given the new department issue, the new licensure issue, and those kinds of things. On the other hand, Tracy doesn't want to not do a committee meeting, and if there's more discussion to be had, that maybe that would be something that ought to happen at the committee level.
I'll leave that up to you. That's a decision for you all, but I'm happy to do a report at either or both or just one. You all just let me know what you all would prefer.
I think if we're going to have the legislative committee meeting, which is fine, hopefully someone from the department would attend, because otherwise we're just going to be talking about things we don't really know answers for.
And I think that Lauren came to the legislative committee last time.
She did. Mm-hmm. Yep.
So why don't we check with her and see if she'll do that? And so Shannon, it looks like we are going to schedule a legislative committee meeting.
Okay.
We'll try to invite Lauren to attend. Yeah.
Christy, are you mainly just like having questions around like going forward, what the department's going to look like, or?
Yeah, I mean, my main question is what the commission's going to look like, and I mean, if my understanding was that it was going to move more towards an advisory council and not really have a specific say or input into the different programs and how things are run. If that may be completely off, but I think that's part of the issue, right? It's just understanding exactly where our place is, and should I even be hosting a legislative committee meeting, right? Like, I mean, I know it's not quite here yet, but I just don't know what the parameters are.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that's true for a lot of folks. So it seems to me that really is a major part of of this upcoming meeting, is having that discussion. I mean, if the commissioner, and I'll try to talk to him tomorrow, will start out, kind of giving his perspective, right? Thinking about what happens and some of the practical considerations about what's going to happen moving forward, and then really sort of having that discussion about the role of the commission itself. That makes sense.
It makes
It does.
sense. Mhm.
Okay, so I think that there are a couple of touch points we need to make with the commissioner, with Lauren, with others, and then if it's okay with this executive committee, I'll just work with Shannon to get a little more specific agenda together based on this broad-ranging conversation we've had and shoot it out to you all for comment and approval. Would that be okay?
That makes sense.
Sounds great.
Okay. Then that is what we will do. Is there any other business to come before this full body? Okay.
Carol, I don't know if you want to venture this far yet, but there are 3 new members that are not assigned a committee.
Okay.
So,
And that would be,
so you have Anthony Holt, Terry Frank. So
Yeah.
Anthony is GNRC, Terry is East Ethra,
yeah.
and then Jerry Curry is just joining us from ACMS.
And Jerry, yeah, I hope she can come to the meeting.
And then Jason Schwab is the federally chartered organization rep, which is an ARP right now.
Right. So Terry and Jason had offered to be on a bylaws committee. This was a couple meetings back. And then we kind of put that on hold because of all these changes that were happening. So I'll try to confirm with them if they're still willing to do that or if they've got an interest in being on one of the other committees. You know, I cannot interest anyone in the audit committee. One of the reasons to change the bylaws because that's the only committee that's required, and we don't seem to be able to manage to do that. So I'll take a look at on those things, but we will also, put that on the agenda. Well, I don't think it needs to go on the agenda. We just probably need to reach out to those guys. And then, and then if we change committee structure, et cetera, you know, for coming up in September, say, then we would have an opportunity to make the new assignments for whatever that is. So thank you, Shannon. I will reach out to those 4 folks and make sure I know what we're doing. And I'll work with you on that. Anything else? If not, I'll accept a motion to adjourn our meeting.
I motion to adjourn for second.
Thank you. I know. We're such a large group. It's kind of like somebody's got to do this, you know. Here we go. So I guess we need a roll call vote on adjourning. See, I remember it this time. Yeah.
All right. Good show.
All right, Carol Westlake,
Yes.
Christy Wick,
Yes.
Tracy Moore,
Yes.
Mike Willis.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you to the 3 of you and thank you to the staff. Appreciate it. I know there's a lot going on, but looking forward to seeing everybody early next month. So thank you guys.
Thank you all.
Take care.
Thank you.